In the cold, silent hours before dawn, at exactly 4:28 a.m., the dark sky over Russia's far east erupted into blinding light. A thunderous explosion rolled across the borderlands, shaking windows for miles. Within moments, one of the most secretive operations in Russia's wartime network had vanished in fire and smoke. What Ukraine destroyed that morning was not just a military site, it was the central hub of a $3 billion clandestine alliance between Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, an alliance that had quietly fueled Moscow's war for more than a year. For months, Western intelligence agencies and Kyiv's own analysts had traced fragments of this covert relationship. Mysterious freighters sailing under false flags, unmarked trains moving west from Vladivostok, and encrypted financial channels linking banks in Moscow to accounts in Pyongyang. The evidence pointed to one conclusion. Russia, desperate under sanctions, had turned to North Korea for survival. It was a union of isolation. Putin needed weapons, millions of artillery shells, rockets, and short-range missiles to feed his grinding war in Ukraine. Kim Jong-un needed oil, food, and above all, cash. Cut off from the global economy, both leaders found in each other the perfect partner for defiance. By late 2024, the two regimes had built a hidden trade empire worth an estimated $3 billion, operating in the shadows beyond any international oversight. Their arrangement was intricate and bold. North Korean cargo ships, often registered to obscure shell companies in Southeast Asia, carried their loads across the Sea of Japan to Russia's Pacific ports. Once docked in Nakodka or Vladivostok, manifests were rewritten. Shipments of ammunition disguised as industrial goods or construction materials. From there, the containers were transferred to rail, moved under military escort through Russia's interior, and distributed to depots near the front lines. Each train carried the disguised heartbeat of an illegal alliance, the supply of a war that Moscow could no longer sustain alone. At the center of this web was a logistics complex near the small border city of Kherson, known in Western intelligence files as Node 47. Outwardly, it looked like a routine freight terminal. Rows of warehouses, cranes, and cargo containers. In truth, it was the operational core of the Russia-North Korea trade corridor. Satellite surveillance and intercepted communications revealed that almost half of the goods exchanged between the two countries passed through this single location. Node 47 was not only a transit point, it was the symbol of how deeply Pyongyang's factories had become entwined with Russia's war machine. For Ukraine's intelligence services, Node 47 represented a high-value target that could cripple Russia's supply chain and expose its foreign dependencies. Supported by Western partners, Kyiv's analysts spent months gathering data, tracking ship movements, decoding encrypted communications, and studying the rhythms of the facility's operations. The pattern was clear. Every few weeks, new convoys arrived directly after cargo deliveries from North Korea. Ukrainian analysts waited for that moment when the warehouses were packed and the site was most vulnerable. That moment came this morning. At 4:28 a.m., a formation of Ukrainian long-range missiles streaked across the sky. The first wave struck the main logistics terminal, triggering a series of detonations that tore through the compound. The second wave targeted the adjacent fuel reserves and command posts, ensuring that the site would not just be damaged, but obliterated. Witnesses across the region reported seeing multiple explosions over the next hour as stored munitions continued to ignite. Satellite imagery taken minutes later showed nothing but a vast plume of heat and debris, the once vital Node 47 reduced to scorched ruins. Initial assessments indicated catastrophic losses. Intelligence analysts estimate that over $600 million worth of military supplies, including artillery shells, missile components, and industrial fuel, were destroyed in the strike. For a supply chain valued at $3 billion, this was a crippling blow, one that would disrupt Russia's wartime logistics for months. The political and psychological shockwaves were immediate. In Moscow, the Kremlin scrambled to contain the fallout. Official statements dismissed the blast as an accidental fire at an industrial storage site. But the cover story collapsed within hours as independent analysts published satellite evidence confirming the scale of the destruction. Russian military bloggers, usually deferential to the regime, erupted in anger, accusing officials of incompetence and negligence for allowing such a vital hub to be exposed. In Pyongyang, the silence was even more telling. State media abruptly suspended scheduled broadcasts about expanded cooperation with Russia. Kim Jong-un reportedly convened an emergency meeting of his inner security circle, assessing how deeply the loss would affect the regime's finances. Analysts in Seoul estimated that the collapse of Node 47 could wipe out up to 40% of North Korea's foreign currency inflows, tightening the grip of economic isolation around the regime's neck. Even Beijing took notice. China, already wary of being drawn into Russia's shadow trade, quietly increased monitoring of its northeastern ports and border regions. While it has maintained a cautious neutrality in the Ukraine conflict, Beijing viewed the Russia-North Korea cooperation as a destabilizing liability. The destruction of Node 47, therefore, reduced Beijing's exposure to a destabilizing channel, a chance to distance itself from two increasingly unpredictable partners. For Ukraine, the operation represented more than a tactical success. It was a statement of capability. The precision, intelligence, and timing of the strike showcased a transformation in Ukraine's warfare strategy. No longer limited to defensive operations, Kyiv has embraced a campaign of strategic disruption, dismantling the networks that sustain Russia's war from the inside out. Every successful strike now serves a dual purpose, crippling Moscow's logistics and exposing its global web of illicit support. The military consequences were immediate. Within hours, Ukrainian frontline units reported a sudden decrease in Russian artillery fire along parts of Donetsk and Luhansk. The interruption in supply from the Far East had begun to ripple across the battlefield. Russian commanders, already stretched thin, were forced to reroute dwindling stockpiles and scale back offensive operations. But the broader consequences are geopolitical. With its secret supply chain destroyed, Russia's credibility as a global partner lies in ruins. Its reputation for resilience, the illusion that it could weather sanctions through alternative alliances, has been shattered. Iran, Belarus, and even Syria, all of whom maintain varying degrees of cooperation with Moscow, are now watching closely. If Russia cannot even protect its covert infrastructure, how long before its other secret deals begin to unravel? For North Korea, the collapse of this alliance is more than financial. It is a strategic humiliation. Kim Jong-un had hoped that aiding Russia would buy him diplomatic relevance and protection, perhaps even concessions in future negotiations with China or the West. Instead, the partnership has exposed Pyongyang's vulnerability. With the network now public and its profits obliterated, North Korea finds itself once again isolated, poorer, weaker, and more dependent on Beijing than before. The strike on Node 47 thus marks a turning point not only in the war, but in the global balance of power. It demonstrates that Ukraine's reach now extends beyond battlefields, that its intelligence and precision capabilities can dismantle alliances once thought untouchable. This was not just an act of destruction, it was a deliberate unveiling of a hidden system of survival that Russia had built in secret. Modern warfare, as this event proves, is no longer confined to trenches and front lines. It is fought in data centers, trade routes, and the silent corridors of finance. Ukraine's campaign against Russia's shadow economy, from Iranian drone factories to North Korean weapons depots, is rewriting the very nature of deterrence. Where Russia fights secrecy, Ukraine faces exposure. Where Moscow relies on concealment, Kyiv strikes with transparency and precision. As the sun rose over the ashes of Node 47, one truth became undeniable. The alliances built in desperation are also the easiest to destroy. Kim Jong-un's $3 billion gamble on Putin's war has ended in flames, leaving both regimes more isolated than ever. For Putin, it is another fracture in an already crumbling foundation. For Kim, it is a brutal reminder that his ambitions, like his alliance, can be turned to ash by forces far beyond his control. And for Ukraine, it is a moment of triumph, not of conquest, but of control. The precision strike at 4:28 AM stands as a testament to intelligence, strategy, and resilience. It was a message sent not only to Moscow and Pyongyang, but to every nation watching. No secret alliance, no hidden deal, and no illicit supply chain is beyond Ukraine's reach. This was more than a missile strike. It was a demonstration of will, a declaration that the age of impunity for aggressors and their enablers is ending. In one fiery moment, Ukraine exposed the limits of tyranny and the power of precision. And in doing so, it changed the course of this war, and perhaps the future of global conflict itself.